Welcome to this World Events reading. Today I'm focusing on Greenland. So that will include Norway, the Arctic area, European countries, Canada, NATO, and the US. And I'm focusing on this today because it came up in the 2026 predictions for the year ahead. Just letting you know some of the things that are going on. I'm delving and making questions out of it. So I may use my Stardust Tarot, I may use my Forecaster Oracle, and I will be using my Governance Oracle. So we've got major geopolitical tension unfolding around Greenland at the moment. In the headlines, pulling in Norway, Canada, NATO, European countries, as well as the US into this energy. The core issue is the US push for strategic control and influence over Greenland, which has alarmed NATO allies and created fractures within the alliance. Actually, a card that is to the side is tyrannical leadership. Bound by allegiance to NATO, that is, that energy there. So key points from the current events. We've got US escalating rhetoric and pressure around Greenland, unsettling European leaders and straining NATO unity, which I think was connected to that card that just popped out about bound by allegiance to NATO. President Trump has threatened tariffs and expressed interest in acquiring control of Greenland. We have a successful outcome on the table for that question. NATO is preparing for major Arctic military exercises called Cold Response 26. This is in Norway, partly in reaction to rising tensions and the need to secure the Arctic region. Slow to pull cards then, actually, to come through for that question. Feeling a little bit powerless over that. Norway feeling a little bit powerless over getting control of the Arctic area. And then we've got this feeling a bit defeated. So pulling in a NATO here into the equation. Next is European leaders warned that the US attempts to take Greenland could shatter NATO. In my last reading that I did, I think it was the predictions for February, I got that invading Greenland would be a disaster, is actually what I got from here. And here it's saying there's environmental controls about harvesting Greenland's resources, economic challenges. Now, economic challenges could be fighting a war. Bottom of the deck over here, you're seeing military control and strategy I just saw as well. But here I'm seeing with this, somebody being true to their word or somebody not going back on their word. There's environmental concerns. This could be Trump doing what he said he's going to do, but at risk to economic challenges to do it. The costs are very high to So high cost of defending Greenland, going to war with Greenland. It comes at an economic cost. War is not cheap, is what I'm hearing. So I wonder if it's worth it. And I feel like they feel like it is. The US feels like it is. Now here it says Trump has publicly stepped back from military action, even though the military car was sitting on the bottom of the deck there. But the uncertainty has already pushed NATO close to breaking point. Perhaps looking at the volatility of US when it comes to its relations with NATO and being at a breaking point, like it just said, but unresolvable differences in this area. So policy overhauls or overhauling structures around NATO, overhauling, and then I'm seeing selling costs money again, but something around restructuring something, laws or the structure of NATO because of its unresolvable differences around what's going on with America. The volatility, I should say. It's volatility and unresolvable differences. So this power struggle over Arctic dominance, resources and military positioning. This is territorial tension, alliance stress to do with NATO. There's hidden motives to do with the US, and there's strategic calibration. Opening negotiations to work on a solution here, a diplomatic solution. There may be some deals made around this. But they could be at a facade of goodwill with underlying motives in the background. So agreeing at face value only. But really there's a isolated outcast energy here. Looking to get support because somebody is losing allies, looking for new support because they're feeling outed from NATO energy here. But there's open negotiations where they're working on a solution, but it is deals do get made, but only with a facade of goodwill. So they're not real. They're only at face value. They're not. There's no substance to the deals that get made. Okay, Greenland's roles. What is the true strategic purpose behind US focus on Greenland? What is the true strategic purpose behind the US strong focus on Greenland? Territory loss. I don't know if it's loss of a person or if it's loss of ground, loss of territory, loss of traction on a plan because of the coming up against leadership battles. But having to open negotiations, using power of persuasion to get their way, but only at a facade of goodwill. There's more in the background, more behind it. Being very controlled in how much they let out of the information. Feels a bit like Trump, but it also feels like NATO as well. They're not saying in their negotiations to each other or the negotiations between Greenland. I don't think everything's being revealed here. There's something hidden here. So the strategic purpose behind US focus on Greenland was my question. The true facts are being controlled, being very careful not to what they say in this situation, using the power of persuasion in this head-to-head battle around control and dominance, strategic positioning around US and Greenland. But there's losses here. Now, what are the hidden influences here? What is that's being restricted or being hidden? This is bound by allegiances. I feel like this is NATO related. The allegiances with NATO here is where this is coming in. Now the question is, what is hidden, or agendas around shaping the future for Greenland? What I was picking up on here is a temporary pullback from the US, because they've got to balance priorities on the home front. There's something intense going on in the US. So for now, he's got to do a bit of a reverse course, pull energy back to get things sorted out in his own place. Now down the bottom we're seeing, did I mention US? But I'm seeing tyrannical leadership, power of persuasion, trusted advisor, relentless determination to put strategy in place. This is a key. I can't stress enough how important Greenland is to the US, because they're being very firm with me here. They're saying this is a key point to this strategy or this plan moving forward, is what they're saying. But they're saying, while there's a relentless determination to get their way, to get Greenland, temporarily liberation prevails because Trump has to reverse course, because he's got to balance priorities with things going on home soil. But this is NATO. Let's take a look at Norway with the Arctic and the military activity. I must say I don't know. I haven't looked at anything with Norway. I had somebody ask me a question about Norway, concerns about Norway. Okay, what is the deeper meaning behind Norway's leadership in the Arctic? I'm not going to go there. I just think that they, it's mostly their area. They kind of look after it, from what I'm gathering. So I'm not going to ask that question. Concerns about power shift. So that would be what that is. They're concerned about a power shift of who normally looks after the Arctic, and other countries stepping in to take over. What outcomes may arise from the Cold Response 26 exercises? So what I'm picking up with this energy, I didn't want to push this card down here with this line. So this is somebody outside of the trusted circle, somebody that is not aligned to what's going on between NATO. They're either not aligned with NATO or they're not aligned with the US. There's a division here, or a divide. I didn't want to put this card down here with the rest of the line here. So it is saying that there is a divide or a division. Now, what the question was related to these exercises, this Cold Response 26 exercise that's taking place in the Arctic, and NATO and Norway. This is Trump. I'm just going to be very honest and tell you exactly what I'm seeing here. This is Trump. This one I've already learned from my last reading is the mining of rare earth minerals. Amongst something else, I feel like there's something else that is controlled speech they're not telling us about. Same thing that came up when I read on this last week. I read different questions, but connected to these rare earth minerals or the control of Greenland, they're not telling us everything. Trump, US, is not telling us everything here. This is Trump. This is NATO. Even though these operations that are taking place are exercises to make sure that NATO is a united front, to stand together against a shift of power or a power shift that's coming in with an unwavering stance on this situation. Unwavering united front is what the exercise is for. So there's difficult decisions that will need to be made, and this exercise will be showing where the difficulties lie in this scenario or this situation. But what they're really trying to pull out of this is an unwavering stance as a united front, and they're looking at where the leaks are. They're looking at where the weak links are in this united front or unwavering stance, because the real risk here is a power shift energy here against the one that is outside of the circle. Over here we've got the controlled speech, not telling us everything about the rare earth minerals or the mining of Greenland. External influence, so this is the US coming into Greenland because it's what the topic's about. So the US, which is an external country, and this is US flag right here, coming into Greenland as an outsider to gain control of Greenland. But there's a targeted attack here on the cards, a targeted attack. Interesting. Let's read Canada, because Canada came up in the 2026 predictions that they were going to be significant, or there was going to face changes. There was something going on with Canada. Now, I don't know what that could possibly be, and I just want to know if it's somehow connected to the Arctic or the Greenland situation. Is that okay? Straight away, let me know, cards. Is that what you meant when you pulled out 2026, that Canada was going to be big? Concerns or big situations around Canada for 2026? A supporting role or assisting role in the situation with Greenland. Is that correct? So I guess US in, I don't know why it would have a negative impact on Canada, but there's a mourning or a loss here that is connected to Canada that has a negative impact. Could be related to a leadership battle with Canadian leaders, or leadership battle between Canada and US. Over here, a bit of a trade war battle going on. Canada, and trade war to me sounds like US. So this is puts Canada in an unusual predicament, I think, when they're seeking the support of Canada. It puts them in a sensitive position. So then we've got trade war on the table, but they are affected negatively here. To do with leadership battle. What role is Canada meant to play in this unfolding Arctic narrative? Very much to do with a power shift. So the main cards here are it may cause strained relations. Now, it could be connected because it's like the border. Canada's so close to the Arctic, or the situation here. They're very close to the situation. Now, I don't know if this is ice. If this is the border deportation card, it is usually connected to that ice. But because we're asking about Canada, I feel like the strained relations will come because of Canada's proximity to Greenland. And what happens with a power shift, and where does Canadian support go? It puts them in a really sensitive position. Okay, we'll have a beneficial impact here, which is a good card to have. Now, I actually just think it's the word impact is what's relevant here. It impacts Canada because of their proximity to the border, to their location to Greenland. I think that's what that card is indicating. Over here we've got trusted advisor, shadow operation. So this is operations that are taking place between the Cold Response 26 exercises. This could be NATO's or Norway's intervention here. Operations it's shadow operations, but it's operations that's taking place concerning Greenland, and Canada wondering who to trust, because there's a lot of censorship here. There's a bit of energy of not being truthful about true intentions. So I feel it just really compromises Canada in some way, the values. It causes a strained relations. This power shift or this power struggle between Greenland and US puts Canada in a really a predicament, a strained relation because of the proximity to Greenland. Could also cause some kind of economic challenges with economic uncertainty around Canada or Canadians. Okay, let's do one for NATO. NATO's energy here around the escalating tension or power shift threats with US and Greenland. Now there's a plan. They've got a plan. So NATO has a plan. It's part of what this military operations are, what they involve. It's the plan or the preparation. They are preparing. They are strategically putting moves in place here, and they're monitoring the situation or the outcomes of those strategies very carefully. So part of this unfolding exercise that they're doing, the military operations, is part of strategy to prepare for a situation and monitor what the possible outcomes could be around that situation so they can be better prepared for it. Down the bottom, it's in the middle, it's a bit of a balancing act for NATO between the US and its foreign threats. US invading's the wrong word, but US power shift energy to do with Greenland, wanting to take over Greenland, shift of power, and how that affects NATO, how that affects the globe, or the global impact of the strain and stress that it puts on NATO against foreign threats. Now, what I mean by that is against foreign threats being this US threat. This US situation could cause impacts on weaknesses on a global scale. And they've got to balance their priorities. So because there's so much tension going on in, say, Russia, China, other places, NATO has to be very balanced with their priorities on where they put their attention. And that's why they're doing these military exercises, so they can be prepared for all situations, not just US and Greenland, but how that impacts global situations such as China and Russia. Let's take a look at America, the US. Please know I shouldn't have to explain myself every time. I am not for any politician or any side. I am always for the people. What the cards will reveal is what the cards will reveal. I won't put any personal opinion or slant on that. For one thing, because I don't have one, but for others, because I'm just going to read what the cards say. So let's take a look at the US energy around Greenland, what's going on with that. I saw that pullback card earlier, having to refocus or reverse course because there's something else they're going to have to pay attention to. But still, definitely will be in the background, even if they are working on some stuff to do with ice in the US. I said ice because I could hear it. I could hear Spirit saying ice, and the Borders and Deportation card is my ice card. So that's definitely saying that's what that is. So even though they're going to have to, US will pull back to focus on this situation here, shadow or in the background, there's still an operation. This is relentless for a power shift to do with this. So they're not pulling back on this, they're just reversing course temporarily, like I said in the last spread, because of the shifting dynamics of what's going on with ice and on the home front, on home soils and Borders and Deportation. So that's going to pull his energy back a little bit, but not permanently. So there is shifting dynamics there on home soil, and that, but in the background there's still operations for power shift. So we're just in a little bit of a pause for this coming up. So I'm going to leave that there. Hope that you enjoyed that reading, and I will be back again soon.